I watched our marriage dismantled with withdrawals and a secret phone. I sold the ring, hired a shark lawyer, and turned betrayal into cold freedom. Goodbye before work, and find an empty bed. Not unusual, right? She's probably already up making coffee. But then you walk to the kitchen and it's silent. Her car keys are gone, but her purse is still on the counter. Her phone charger is unplugged. Something feels off, but you brush it away. Maybe she had an early meeting she forgot to mention. By Tuesday, that uneasy feeling had grown into genuine concern. No text, no call, no explanation. I tried reaching her straight to voicemail. Her social media, radio silence. Wednesday came and went the same way. By Thursday, I was calling her sister, her best friend, even her mother. The responses were all eerily similar. Oh, I'm sure she's fine. Or maybe she needed some space. But their voices carried something else, like they knew more than they were letting on. Friday hit different. That's when reality slapped me across the face. I walked into our bedroom and really looked around. Her everyday clothes were still hanging in the closet, but I noticed gaps, specific gaps. Her favorite jeans, gone. The black dress she wore when she wanted to feel confident, gone. The small travel bag she used for weekend trips, nowhere to be found. This wasn't a woman who stepped out for air. This was someone who had packed strategically and left. But here's what really twisted the knife. Our third wedding anniversary was exactly 1 week away. I had been planning something special for months, not just dinner and flowers. I'm talking about a real celebration. I had booked that little bed and breakfast where we spent our honeymoon, arranged for time off work, even bought her a stunning anniversary ring that cost me more than my first car. The ring was sitting in my dresser drawer, wrapped and ready, while my wife had apparently decided our marriage wasn't worth a conversation. The weekend was torture. I sat in our living room staring at 3 years of memories scattered around like evidence of a life that suddenly felt like a lie. Wedding photos on the mantle, her coffee mug still in the sink from Monday morning. Her book still open on the nightstand with a bookmark on page 247. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt real anymore. Sunday night, I made one last attempt to reach her. This time something had changed. Instead of going to voicemail, I heard that cold automated message. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. She hadn't just ignored my calls. She had blocked me entirely. 3 years of marriage and I got the same treatment as a telemarketer. That's when it hit me. This wasn't some impulsive decision or mental breakdown. This was calculated, planned, executed with precision. While I was planning our anniversary celebration, she was planning her escape. While I was thinking about our future together, she was already living in a future without me. I spent that Sunday night going through bank statements, looking for clues I had missed. There they were, small withdrawals over the past month, always in cash, always amounts that wouldn't raise red flags. A 20 here, 50% there. She had been preparing for weeks, maybe longer. Every I love you she had said during that time. Every normal conversation about weekend plans or grocery lists, all of it had been performed while she was actively planning to abandon our marriage. The most pathetic part, I had been excited about our anniversary. I had been looking forward to giving her that ring, to seeing her face light up, to celebrating what I thought was a strong marriage. I had been living in a completely different reality than she was. While I saw a happy couple approaching a milestone, she saw a prison she needed to escape from. By Monday morning, exactly 1 week after she vanished, I was sitting alone at our kitchen table with a cup of coffee that tasted like betrayal, and a head full of questions that would never get answered. The anniversary ring was still in that drawer, mocking me. Our reservation confirmation was still in my email. Her ghost was everywhere, but the woman herself had evaporated like she never existed. That's when I realized something crucial. She hadn't just left me. She had tried to leave me broken, confused, and begging for scraps of explanation that would never come. She wanted me to chase her, to plead with her family and friends, to spend weeks or months desperately trying to understand what I had done wrong. She expected me to sit in this house like a lost puppy, waiting for her to decide whether I deserved answers. But here's what she didn't count on. I don't beg, I don't chase, and I sure don't sit around waiting for someone who thought our marriage was disposable. She had made her choice with surgical precision. Now it was time for me to make mine. The first person I called was her sister. We had always gotten along well, or so I thought. When she picked up, her voice had this weird rehearsed quality to it. "Oh, hi," she said, like she was surprised to hear from me, surprised as if a husband calling about his missing wife was unexpected. "Have you heard from her?" I asked directly. "No point dancing around it. Not recently," came the response. Too quick, too clean. I'm sure she's just taking some time to think things through. There it was. The first confirmation that this wasn't some accident or emergency. Her own sister knew this was intentional, but the way she said it, like she was reading from a script, told me everything I needed to know. This conversation had already happened. They had already discussed what to tell me. Her best friend was next on my list. Same story, different voice. Oh, you know how she gets when she's overwhelmed. She probably just needs space. The casual tone was almost insulting. Here I was, genuinely concerned about my wife's well-being, and everyone seemed to think this was perfectly normal behavior. Either they were all incredibly naive, or I was the only one being kept in the dark. Her mother was the most telling conversation. When I explained that she had been gone for days without any contact, there was this pause, not a shocked pause, a calculating one. Then she said, "Well, marriage is hard work. Sometimes people need to figure out what they really want." That phrase hit me like a freight train. What they really want, not where she is or if she's safe, but what she wants. Her own mother was talking like this was a conscious choice, not a missing person situation. The woman who raised her was completely unsurprised that her daughter had vanished without a word. By the end of that week, I had contacted everyone in her circle, CO workers, college friends, even her cousin who lived across the country. The pattern was identical: awkward pauses, vague responses, and a complete lack of concern for her well-being. They all knew something I didn't, and they had all agreed to keep me in the dark. That's when I started paying attention to details I had missed before. I went through our recent conversations looking for signs. 3 weeks ago, she had asked me about our joint savings account balance, said she was curious about our financial planning. 2 weeks ago, she had insisted on doing the grocery shopping alone, claiming she wanted to try a new store. Last week, she had been unusually interested in my work schedule, asking multiple times when I would be traveling for business next. I checked our bank accounts online. The joint savings account she had asked about was lighter than it should have been. Not cleaned out, she was too smart for that, but systematically reduced over the past month. Small, regular withdrawals that individually looked innocent, but together painted a clear picture. She had been funding her disappearance with our money, and I found a real smoking gun. While going through papers in our home office, I discovered that she had requested copies of important documents, birth certificate, passport, social security card, about 6 weeks ago. The kind of paperwork you need when you're starting fresh somewhere else. She had been planning this escape for at least a month and a half, maybe longer. But the most damaging discovery came when I checked our cell phone account online. She hadn't just blocked my number. She had added a new line to our plan 3 weeks ago, a second phone. While living in our house, sleeping in our bed, and telling me she loved me, she'd been operating with a secret phone line that I was unknowingly paying for. The call logs told the whole story. Dozens of calls to numbers I didn't recognize, all made during times when I was at work or out of the house. Long conversations, some lasting over an hour. Text messages sent at all hours of the night. She had been living a completely parallel life, and I'd been footing the bill for her betrayal. I called one of the numbers. A man answered. When I explained who I was and why I was calling, he hung up immediately. I tried again, blocked. That told me everything I needed to know about what kind of support system she had built for herself during her escape planning. The timeline became crystal clear. For weeks, possibly months, she had been methodically preparing to abandon our marriage. Every normal day we shared, every routine conversation, every time she said, "I love you," all of it was happening, while she was actively working toward leaving me. She had turned our entire relationship into a performance while secretly building her exit strategy. Her family and friends hadn't just known about this. They had been helping her. The awkward phone calls, the rehearsed responses, the complete lack of concern for her safety, it all made sense now. They weren't worried about her because they knew exactly where she was and what she was doing. I was the only one who had been living in reality while everyone else was part of her elaborate deception. The most insulting part was how carefully she had orchestrated the timing. Disappearing exactly 1 week before our anniversary wasn't random. It was calculated for maximum psychological impact. She wanted me to spend that week spiraling, questioning everything, desperately trying to reach her while she ignored every attempt. She wanted me broken and confused when the anniversary arrived, sitting alone with all the plans I had made for us. But as I sat there with all this evidence spread out in front of me, something shifted inside my chest. Not heartbreak anger, pure focused anger. She had played me for a fool, used our joint resources to fund her betrayal, and recruited our entire social circle to help humiliate me. She had spent weeks lying to my face while planning the most cowardly exit possible. She thought she was clever. She thought she had executed the perfect disappearing act, leaving me confused and desperate for answers that would never come. She expected me to spend months wondering what I had done wrong, begging her friends and family for information, maybe even hiring a private investigator to track her down. But here's what she hadn't considered. I don't play games with people who think I'm disposable. If she wanted to disappear, I was about to help her stay gone permanently. She had made her choice with surgical precision. Now it was time to show her exactly what losing me actually looked like. The anniversary ring was still sitting in my dresser drawer, wrapped in elegant jewelry store paper with a ribbon that now looked obscene. I'd spent 3 months saving for that ring, working extra hours, skipping lunches, even selling some of my old tools to scrape together the money. It wasn't just expensive, it was perfect. White gold with 3 diamonds representing our 3 years together. Custom engraved with our wedding date on the inside. The jeweler had called it a piece she'll treasure forever. Forever. The irony was so thick I could taste it. I unwrapped it slowly like I was diffusing a bomb. The ring caught the light from my bedroom window, sparkling with the same brilliance that had made me so excited to surprise her. I had imagined her face when she opened the box, had rehearsed the little speech about how each diamond represented a year of our marriage, and how I was looking forward to adding more stones as the years went by. Now, it just looked like the world's most expensive paperweight. But as I held that ring, something clicked in my brain. This wasn't just a piece of jewelry anymore, it was leverage. It was my ticket out of the victim role she had tried to cast me in, while she was probably sitting somewhere smugly waiting for me to call her family again or show up at her sister's house, begging for information. I was holding approximately $8,000 worth of pure strategic opportunity. She had disappeared because she thought she held all the power in this situation. She controlled the when, the how, and the why of our marriage ending. She had the support system, the secret phone, the escape plan, and the element of surprise. But she had forgotten one crucial detail. I still controlled our shared resources, our home, and most importantly, my own reactions to her games. The more I thought about it, the more brilliant my situation became. She had vanished, expecting me to be the desperate, abandoned husband, clinging to hope and begging for scraps of her attention. She wanted me financially and emotionally invested in getting her back while she held all the cards. But that ring represented something she hadn't counted on, liquid assets that could buy me something far more valuable than her return. Complete independence from her manipulation. I drove to the jewelry store that afternoon. The same salesman who had helped me pick out the ring 3 months ago greeted me with a big smile, probably expecting me to buy earrings to match or ask about resizing. His face fell when I explained I needed to return it. "Was there a problem with the piece?" he asked, clearly confused. "No problem with the ring," I said. "Problem with the marriage?" He gave me that sympathetic look people reserve for divorcing men, but I stopped him before he could launch into some awkward condolence speech. "I'm not here for sympathy, I'm here for business. What can you give me for this?" The return policy was strict. They could offer 60% of what I paid since it was custom engraved, $4,800. Under normal circumstances, losing $3,200 would have stung. But these weren't normal circumstances, this was war, and I had just converted a sentimental liability into strategic ammunition. I took the cash, all of it. Walking out of that store with $4,800 in my pocket felt like the first real power move I had made since this whole nightmare started. She thought she was watching me from whatever hole she had crawled into, probably expecting me to be calling florists about anniversary flowers or restaurants about dinner reservations. Instead, I had just liquidated the symbol of our future together and walked away with enough money to completely rewrite the ending of this story. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with the cash spread out in front of me like a war chest. This wasn't just money, it was freedom. Freedom from her timeline, freedom from her games, freedom from the pathetic role of abandoned husband that she had written for me. The beauty of the situation was poetic. She had disappeared to avoid a conversation about our marriage, thinking she could control the narrative by keeping me in the dark. But by vanishing, she had given up any claim to influence what happened next. She wasn't here to object, to negotiate, or to manipulate the outcome. She had forfeited her vote when she chose cowardice over communication. I started making a list of exactly how this money would buy my freedom. First, a consultation with the best divorce attorney in town. Not the cheapest, not the most convenient, but the one with the reputation for getting things done quickly and decisively. Second, a private investigator to document exactly where she was and what she was doing, not because I wanted her back, but because I wanted evidence for the divorce proceedings. Third, new locks for the house, because she had made it clear that she considered our home a place she could abandon and return to at will. But the real genius of my plan was psychological. She had tried to disappear with all the power, leaving me powerless and confused. By selling that ring, I was sending a message that would eventually reach her. I wasn't waiting around for her to decide my fate. I wasn't preserving our marriage like a museum exhibit while she figured out what she wanted. I was actively dismantling what she had abandoned, starting with the symbol of commitment she had walked away from. The ring had represented 3 years of marriage and the promise of more to come. Now it represented something far more valuable. The down payment on a life where I would never again be at the mercy of someone who thought love was a game of disappearing acts. She probably expected to find me broken when she eventually surfaced, desperate enough to accept any explanation she offered, and grateful just to have her acknowledge my existence again. She was expecting the same man who had spent 3 months saving for an anniversary ring, who had planned romantic getaways and made dinner reservations for 2. But that man had died the moment I realized this disappearance was intentional. The man she would eventually face had sold her ring, hired a lawyer, and converted her abandonment into his advantage. She had wanted to ghost me. Perfect. Now I could make that disappearance permanent in the most legal, final way possible. As I put the cash in my safe that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced since she vanished: complete control over my own life. She had given me the greatest gift possible by leaving, the absolute certainty that our marriage was over, and the financial means to end it on my terms instead of hers. Tomorrow I would start spending that money, and every dollar would buy me one step further away from the prison she had tried to lock me in. The divorce attorney's office was exactly what I expected: polished mahogany, leather chairs, and the kind of confidence that comes from winning battles other people are afraid to fight. Margaret Stevens had a reputation for being ruthless but fair, and her consultation fee alone would have made me hesitate 3 weeks ago. Today, I slapped down $500 in cash like I was buying groceries. "Tell me about your situation," she said, leaning back in her chair with the air of someone who had heard every sob story imaginable. I laid out the facts without emotion. Wife disappeared without warning, blocked all communication, clearly premeditated based on financial withdrawals and document requests. No contact for over 2 weeks. I showed her the bank statements, the phone records, the timeline I had constructed. "Do you want her back?" she asked bluntly. "I want her gone," I replied. "Permanently and legally." She smiled. Not a sympathetic smile, a predatory one. "I can work with that." Within an hour, she had outlined a strategy that was both simple and devastating. File for divorce immediately based on abandonment, request exclusive use of the marital home, freeze joint accounts to prevent further unauthorized withdrawals, and document everything for an uncontested proceeding. If she wanted to disappear, we would make sure she stayed disappeared, but on my terms, not hers. The retainer was $1,800. I counted it out in cash while she watched with obvious approval. "Most men in your situation spend months hoping their wives will come back," she said. "You're already 3 steps ahead of them." Next stop was the private investigator. I didn't need him to find her. I needed him to document what she was doing and who she was doing it with. Evidence for the divorce proceedings, but also insurance against any attempts she might make to rewrite history. The PI was a former cop who specialized in cheating spouses and missing persons. When I explained my situation, he nodded like he saw this exact scenario twice a week. "She's probably staying with whoever was on the other end of those phone calls," he said, looking at the numbers I had written down. "Give me 72 hours and $500, and I'll have addresses, employment information, and photographs." Another $500 in cash changed hands. I was down to $2,400, but I felt richer than I had in weeks. Every dollar spent was buying me information, leverage, and most importantly, control over a situation where I had previously felt powerless. The locksmith was my next call. By Thursday afternoon, every lock in the house had been changed. New deadbolts, new doorknobs, even a new garage door code. If she decided to make a dramatic return, she would find herself locked out of the life she had abandoned. The symbolism was perfect. She had left voluntarily, and now she couldn't come back uninvited. But the most satisfying purchase was the security system: cameras, motion sensors, the works. If she tried to return when I wasn't home, if she brought friends to help her retrieve belongings, If she made any attempt to enter the property, I would have video evidence. More importantly, I would know about it immediately and could decide whether to allow it or call the police for trespassing. The installation technician was setting up the cameras when my phone rang. Unknown number but local area code. For a split second, I wondered if it was her calling from yet another secret phone. Instead, it was the PI. "Found her," he said without preamble. "She's staying in a furnished apartment across town. Lease started 3 weeks ago, paid for 6 months in advance. Your wife has been planning this for a while." 3 weeks ago, right around the time she had started asking about our savings account balance and doing solo grocery runs, she had been setting up her new life while still sleeping in our bed and eating meals I cooked for both of us. "There's more," he continued. "She's not alone. Guy named Richard works at her company. Divorced, 2 kids, pays substantial alimony. Looks like she upgraded to someone with more financial obligations and less available income." The irony was beautiful. She had left a stable marriage and a comfortable home to play house with a man whose ex-wife was already bleeding him dry. She had traded up to more drama, more complications, and less financial security. Whatever fantasy she had been chasing, reality was going to hit her hard. "I need everything documented," I told him. "Photos, addresses, timeline of when she moved in, any evidence of how long this relationship has been going on. Already on it. I'll have a full report by tomorrow morning." That night, I sat in my newly secured house, watching the security system monitors and feeling something I hadn't experienced since this whole nightmare began. Satisfaction. While she was probably telling her new boyfriend about her crazy, controlling husband and how she had to escape in the middle of the night, I was systematically dismantling any possibility of her return. The joint bank accounts were frozen as of that morning. Her access to our credit cards had been canceled. Her key to the house was now useless. Her ability to waltz back into my life whenever she felt like it had been eliminated with surgical precision. But the real master stroke was yet to come. I had kept $400 from the ring money for one specific purpose: a celebration. Not a bitter, angry celebration, a genuine one. She had done me the greatest favor of my life by showing me exactly who she was before I wasted any more years on our marriage. I ordered dinner from the most expensive restaurant in town. Steak, lobster, wine that cost more per bottle than we usually spent on groceries in a week. I ate it at our dining room table, surrounded by our wedding photos, toasting the end of the biggest mistake I had ever made. Every bite tasted like freedom. Every sip of wine was a reminder that I would never again have to wonder if the person sharing my bed was planning to abandon it. I would never again have to question whether the woman telling me she loved me was secretly building an exit strategy with our shared resources. The security cameras captured it all. A man celebrating his independence in the home his wife had voluntarily forfeited. If she ever tried to claim I had driven her away or treated her badly, I had video evidence of exactly how devastated I was by her departure. By the time I finished that meal, the divorce papers were already being prepared. By the end of the week, she would be served at her love nest, probably in front of her new boyfriend. The man she thought she had left broken and desperate would instead be the one legally ending their marriage and moving forward without her. She had disappeared, thinking she was in control of when and how our relationship would end. But by vanishing, she had given up any say in what happened next. I had taken that ring money and bought something she could never take away from me: the power to close this chapter permanently and on my own terms. 3 weeks after I had sold the ring and set my plan in motion, she finally surfaced. The security cameras caught her approaching the house on a Saturday morning, walking with that familiar, confident stride. She tried her key first, frowning when it didn't work. Then she knocked not urgently, but casually, like she expected to be welcomed home. I took my time answering. When I opened the door, the shock on her face was worth every penny I had spent on those new locks. She had expected to find the same broken man she had left behind. "The locks are different," she said. Like that was the most surprising thing about this situation. "A lot of things are different," I replied, not moving from the doorway. "Can I come in? We need to talk." "No, you can't come in, and no, we don't need to talk. You made your position clear when you disappeared without a word." The confusion on her face was almost comical. She had been gone for nearly a month, and somehow still expected to be welcomed back. "I know you're angry, but I needed space to think about our marriage." "Space to think," I repeated. "Is that what you call moving in with Richard?" Her face went white. She hadn't expected me to know about her coworker boyfriend. "How did you?" Professional investigators are surprisingly affordable when you're not wasting money on anniversary rings. She tried to recover. It's not what you think. We're just friends. I needed somewhere to stay, right? Just friends who lease apartments together. I'm sure his ex-wife will find that fascinating when my lawyer contacts her. That hit home. She hadn't considered that her new boyfriend's messy divorce might become her problem. You hired a lawyer? For the first time, she sounded genuinely concerned. Hired a lawyer, filed for divorce, frozen our joint accounts, and documented your abandonment. Your disappearing act wasn't as clever as you thought. She processed this, realizing her month-long vacation had cost more than she bargained for. You can't freeze our accounts. That's my money too, was your money. When you moved out and started a relationship with another man, you forfeited your claim to marital assets. The reality was sinking in. She had walked away from stability to play house with a broke divorce, and now her safety net was gone. This is ridiculous. I just needed time to think. That doesn't mean I wanted a divorce. Moving in with another man sends a pretty clear message. But don't worry, I got it loud and clear. She softened her voice, trying sympathy. I made a mistake. I was scared about our anniversary, about the pressure. I needed perspective. You got perspective. All right, the perspective of being with a man who's financially ruined and can't afford a second wife. Her face flushed. She wasn't used to being spoken to this directly, especially not by me. I want to come home, she said finally. Home? I looked around. This isn't your home anymore. Your home is that furnished apartment you're sharing with Richard, the one you paid 6 months rent for with our joint savings. You can't throw away 3 years of marriage because I made one mistake. I'm not throwing away anything. You already did when you disappeared. I'm just cleaning up your mess. She tried one last play. What about the anniversary ring? Doesn't that mean anything? I smiled, then genuinely. The ring? I sold it. Used the money to hire the lawyer handling our divorce. Thanks for that. You paid for your own permanent exit. The look on her face was priceless. She had counted on that ring as proof I would take her back. Learning I had converted her anniversary gift into divorce ammunition was the final blow. She turned and walked back to her car without another word. I watched her drive away, knowing it was the last time she would set foot on my property as anything other than a trespasser. 6 months later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office signing the final divorce papers. Margaret Stevens slid the documents across her mahogany desk with the satisfaction of someone who had delivered exactly what she promised. Congratulations, she said. You're officially free. The divorce had been uncontested. After her failed attempt to return home, she had apparently realized that fighting would only cost her money she didn't have while living with a man who was already broke from his first divorce. Her signature on the papers looked defeated. Nothing like the confident handwriting I remembered from our wedding certificate. I kept the house, the savings account, and most importantly, my self-respect. She got to keep her choices and their consequences. Fair trade. The PI's final report had been thorough. Richard's financial situation was even worse than initially reported. His ex-wife had taken him for everything. His kids barely spoke to him, and his salary barely covered his existing obligations. My former wife had traded a comfortable life for someone else's financial disaster. The furnished apartment lease had run out 2 months ago, and they had moved into an even smaller place on the other side of town. But the most satisfying part wasn't her downgrade in living situations. It was how completely I had moved on. The house that had once felt haunted by her absence now felt like exactly what it was. My space decorated to my taste, organized according to my preferences. I had used the remaining money from the ring sale to completely redecorate. New furniture, new paint, new everything. The dining room where I'd eaten that celebratory dinner now hosted regular poker games with friends. The bedroom we had shared was now my private sanctuary with no traces of her ever having existed there. The security system I had installed to keep her out had evolved into something else entirely. A smart home setup that made my life more convenient. Motion sensors that turned lights on when I came home from work. Cameras that let me check on deliveries from my phone. Automated systems that made living alone feel like living in the future. My social life had exploded in ways I hadn't expected. Turns out a lot of my married friends have been waiting for someone to break free from domestic obligations so they could have a reliable wingman again. Friday nights were for going out. Saturday mornings were for sleeping in without anyone asking me to run errands. And Sunday afternoons were for whatever I felt like doing. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had disappeared because she felt trapped by our marriage, suffocated by the routine of our life together. But her escape had freed me from the much more serious trap I hadn't even realized I was in. Being married to someone who saw our relationship as a burden instead of a choice. Dating again had been surprisingly easy. Women seemed to respect a man who had handled his divorce with dignity instead of desperation. The story of how I had sold the anniversary ring to pay for my freedom had become a reliable conversation starter, usually earning approving nods and comments about how refreshing it was to meet a man who didn't chase after women who didn't want him. But the real victory wasn't romantic. It was psychological. I woke up every morning knowing that no one in my life was there under false pretenses. No one was secretly planning an exit strategy while telling me they loved me. No one was using our shared resources to fund their betrayal. The peace of mind was worth more than any ring I could have bought. 3 weeks ago, I had seen her at the grocery store. She looked tired, older somehow, with the worn expression of someone whose romantic fantasy had collided hard with financial reality. She saw me too, started to approach, then apparently thought better of it. I finished my shopping and left without acknowledging her existence. That encounter confirmed what I'd suspected. She was realizing that her great escape had been an expensive mistake, but it was too late for regrets. The bridge between us hadn't just been burned. It had been demolished, paved over, and turned into a parking lot. Yesterday, I had gotten a promotion at work. More money, more responsibility, more opportunities. I celebrated with the same expensive restaurant I had ordered from the night I sold her ring. But this time, I wasn't eating alone. I was with someone who actually wanted to be there, someone who saw dinner with me as a privilege instead of an obligation. As I signed the last page of the divorce papers, Margaret asked what I planned to do next. "Live my life," I said, "on my own terms." She smiled. Best revenge is living well. But she was wrong about one thing. This wasn't revenge. Revenge would have required me to care about her opinion of my happiness. This was something better, complete indifference to whether she approved of the life I had built without her. I walked out of that office a free man in every sense of the word. Free from her games. Free from her manipulation. Free from wondering if the person sharing my bed was planning to abandon it. The ring money had bought me exactly what I told the jeweler it would: my freedom. And unlike the marriage it had originally symbolized, this freedom was guaranteed to last forever,